record button. So we are in record mode now. One of the things that you want to be aware of when you start using Zoom in the classroom, in your office, anywhere you're at, is just some of the basics of even how you manage the call when you get into the call. So I'm just going to talk a few little tips on that. Then I'm going to jump into a slide deck because it's really hard for me to show you what Zoom looks like from within Zoom, because Zoom will hide some of those menus. So you may be seeing it on your screen, but or I may see it on mine, but you wouldn't see it on yours when I'm sharing my screen. So I will have to use slides for that. But one of the first things you might notice is the lighting in the room is also a big help on how well you're going to be seen on the camera. Typically what you want is the light to be in front of you. So I have some windows that are in front of me and the light is coming on me, so it lights me pretty well. You can see my actions. So if you're in a classroom or if you're in an environment, you want that light to be coming to your front. Now, a lot of the time, the cameras will do a great job of trying to balance that light. But if you're in a relatively dark room with a big light behind you, sometimes you come out as a silhouette. So if you're trying to kind of direct people or use your hands to gesticulate and do things like that, it would be a little difficult to see you. Now, when you have a webcam on, it's also difficult for you to see on a whiteboard or some sort of device you may have in the room. The webcam may look really crisp on your end, but when it kind of gets shot through the internet, it can lose a little bit of that clarity. And you also may have some times where it's just not going to be that clear. So there's different ways to project things that you might need to write. We're not going to cover it completely in this session, but I will allude to that, and there will be more about that in tomorrow's session. Another thing that's a really good practice is when you get into Zoom calls is being able to manage the mute button. There's times where I'll be talking and then it might be coming through your speaker and create this weird kind of feedback loop, and you're going to get a lot of different things happening. So I'm the host of this meeting. I notice a few of you guys do not have your mics muted. So for instance, I could go to Karen right here and I can mute her mic. So I hit a mute, and it's not because Karen was doing anything, but she can unmute when she's ready to talk. And so I'm going to go ahead and let's let everyone just highlight their mouse on their screens. In the lower left-hand corner, you should see a little microphone looking deal, and you can mute and unmute your mic there. One thing that's really helpful is once you click the button once or twice, as long as that was the last thing you clicked, you can use your space bar to mute and unmute yourself through the rest of that session. So it's a real quick hotkey. The trick of it is you have to have clicked on the mute button. Otherwise, if you're clicked on a different button, that space bar will adjust that other button. So right now, for instance, I'm talking. I hit my space bar, and so that's why I was muted. So that is just the basics of what we're going to jump into the call. Next, I'm going to just jump into my presentation, and a lot of the slides are just going to explain what we're seeing. So right off the bat, does everyone see, do you see yourselves on my right-hand screen? Are you seeing, okay. Let's see if I can hide this right here. All right, so we are in the Zoom session. So one of the first things that I wanted to talk about is how you get into Zoom. What are the kind of things that you need to do on this campus? Now I see a few of you, I'm gonna actually bring up my chat because I'm gonna need to monitor my chat throughout this session. So if you have any additional questions, just please leave those in the chat, and then I can go faster or slow down depending on what I'm seeing over here. Okay. First things first, how do you get a Zoom account? If you're at CSU-Pueblo, the way that you can get a Zoom account is you'll get one provisioned through the help desk. You call our help desk at the 549-2002. It can get you set up. There's two tiers. There's a tier that will allow you to just take 40-minute calls. It's our free tier. For more of the instructors, though, you want to go on the full tier. The full tier is going to allow you to do full Zoom calls for as long as you need to have those calls happen. So here we are at the Zoom screen. Let's see here. Denise, can you let me know, are you seeing my my Zoom windows over the screen itself right now?
No,
Okay.
You'll have to do whole desktop, I think.
Good. I just wanted to make sure that you're not seeing, because I'm covering all my slide decks right now, so I just wanted to verify that I can have this up. I'm fine without that. Okay, so that's good. I see a few other people joining the call, so hello everyone that just joined. Okay, so as we continue forward, we're at zoom.us. That is where you start your entryway into Zoom. So you'll log in with an account. What we're doing is provisioning with your CSU-Pueblo.edu accounts. Those accounts will get you into this session. There's a quick back and forth. We'll send you an invite. You set up your account. You're going to manage your password at this time by yourself. If you forget that password, you could use the forgot password to get through there. Once you get into Zoom, you're going to have a few options. The first thing that you're seeing right now is my profile. So it just has a bunch of information about myself. You're going to see there's some navigation on that left-hand side of the menu. There's a lot of different things. We're not going to go through all these items today, but I did want to point your attention to the profile. You see the picture of myself, the little drawing of myself. That is my profile picture. So if you are entering a Zoom call, you're logged into Zoom and you're just a participant, say you're not going to show your video, that is what's going to show. So you want to put in a photo that can kind of represent who you are if you are not utilizing your video in those calls. Now below that, there's going to be a lot of other information. So we're looking at personal meeting IDs. That's kind of a room that you set up that's long-standing. So I set that up for myself so that I can have continual meetings. There's no time-based connection on those meetings. And the idea behind it is every so often, it's in the signature of my email. If I send to somebody, hey, let's have a Zoom meeting right now, they click that link, they go into what's called a waiting room, and then I release them into my room. I actually have to let them into my room if that were to happen. So the waiting room is a really helpful feature. So for instance, let's say I'm in the middle of a meeting and I'm working with one person one-on-one, let's say it's a student, and then I see another person come in. They're just hanging out in my waiting room. I can finish my meeting with my student or whoever I'm having that meeting. I can release the other person, and then that I was just meeting with, and then admit the new person. So there's a lot of ways that you use those personal meeting rooms. Today, though, we're going to just be focusing on building meetings that are for like a course or one-off kind of meetings, and just the basics of the setup here. So as you can see, the profile has a lot of information about yourself and how you're going to set up some of those things. Going to your meetings is the bulk of where we're going to spend our time. We're not going to really look at those other options today. You can definitely peek around those options. I may have a few different options than you're seeing on yours, but this is going to be an aggregate of all the meetings that you schedule. So and it looks like there was a good question. Yes, you can admit many students at a time. You can do an admit all or admit one by one. So as we go to this screen, the first thing that you'll notice is that when you click meetings, there's a big blue button there. You should be able to see a schedule a new meeting button. That's where you're going to schedule meetings. We're going to just walk down that path, walk through a typical meeting, and then we'll open it up for any additional questions and we can go from there. So let's say we click on that meeting. The first thing it's going to ask you is, what is the meeting about? You're going to drop in a topic. Now, let's say you're going to do a long-standing class. Every Thursday, you're going to have a meeting from 9 a.m. to 10 o'clock. You can go in here and and this is just a screenshot, so I can't really click through it, but you can click this thing that says reoccurring meeting, and you can create this meeting so that it has the same link to it every single time you have that meeting. Very handy. Additionally, if you don't want to put it based on a time, let's say you're going to meet every Thursday kind of randomly at times, you can set up your meetings to happen at no time, and it's just a link, and you just have to articulate to your end user, hey, show up in this meeting, I'll be in it at this time. But for the sake of this demo, let's say we're setting up this meeting with all the information here. You give a topic, enter a description, set up the times as to when it might occur. And then you're going to give kind of an idea of a duration. The duration is not going to be a hard cutoff. So let's say this one meeting is an hour and you go over 5 hours, totally fine. It's going to happen. It's never going to cut you out. It's just trying to give your participants an idea as to how long they should expect that session to be. Now, it's really good to be cognizant of the time zone you're in as well. So if we're in a different place, you're traveling, there's not too much traveling going on right now, but just making sure that you're setting the time zone that you're in, and it will adapt for the other folks on the other end, depending on where their time zone is at. There's some additional ability to register students or any of the users in the system. Then you get down to that meeting ID. The meeting ID will generally automate a URL or a link that's unique. There's also the ability to use your personal ID. I'm just using generate automatically at this point. The next one is the big one. That's the security. how do you want people to enter your room? I'm not sure how many you've heard in the news, but as of late, there's been a lot of discussion about the security of Zoom calls. If you've not heard about this, Zoom has done a lot to help fix some of the security implications they had with their platform. And one of those things was when you had a Zoom call, anyone could just jump in. And so there was this thing called Zoom bombing that would happen. People would pop in, share their screen, do some bad things in there, and really disrupt the call. So as a result, we're really saying, either you put a passcode is a short password that you give your participants to let them join that meeting, or you enable that waiting room, and you have to be the one that chooses who comes in the room. I have the preference of the waiting room because I like to just let people in as I see fit, and then I have a little bit more control of the room in that case. So you will have to click one of those. It will show you a warning if you do not click one of those. In my screenshot, I had not added that. A little bit lower on, you have some additional options. And this is all default options of how this one single meeting is going to run. So you could change these options depending on how many meetings you set up. But do you want when you get into the call, do you want your video to automatically be on, or do you want your participants' video to be on? And then do you want the audio participants to be able to call in via phone, the computer, or both? So I typically leave it exactly as it is on the defaults. We tried to do our best to set the defaults of what you would really want when you get to the call. A little bit lower, there are some additional things that might be helpful. One of the ones that you can really chew on if you want to utilize is enable join before host. What that does is you can stage a call and it will allow your participants to start entering the call before you even get into the call. That can be a little dicey though because of the security implications we talked about before. I'll let you just know that I don't use that unless it's like a session that I know that I might not be able to get to on time and I need somebody else to get in there. An alternative way to do that though is to add an alternative host. So if you have a coworker, a student that's your GA or somebody in the course that you know is going to be there before you put their email in there. They do have to have a fully licensed Zoom account, but what would happen is they would show up, they would get the host privileges, and then it can allow everyone else in for you. And then when you jump in, you gain the host privileges back. So that's just an example of how you can kind of leverage a setup. But once you hit save, that is it. You have set up a meeting. It's a relatively quick process. Honestly, that took me all of a minute to do when I did it the first time. And now what I'm viewing is just the details of that meeting. You're going to notice on the right-hand side there that there's an area that allows you to copy your invitation. It's a link that just kind of docked off to the right-hand side. It may be a little small on your screen there. But once you click on that link, what's going to happen is going to open up this meeting invitation. So typically what you're doing is you're copying all the details of that meeting invitation and you're pasting it in an email and sending it to your users. You're copying and you're pasting it into Blackboard so that they can see that this is the meeting invite. It's also going to list some phone numbers they can call in. If they just need to dial in and they don't have a computer at hand, you can just dial in on a phone and listen to the Zoom meeting. So very handy settings to have on that side there. So when you copy that meeting invite, you send that out. The only other thing you have to do is show up to the meeting on the time and start your meeting. So again, we're back at that window that we were at before. We started the schedule of the meeting. So kind of imagine yourself as the day you're ready to jump in the meeting. So this morning when I got ready for this call, I jumped in, logged in to zoom.us, clicked on this meetings area, and I clicked professional learning. That's our session today. And I jumped right into this session. I was ready to go. All my settings were set up. And then I watched you all come into the waiting room and started admitting you as I saw you come in and tried to greet you as you came in. So now I'm going to jump on the other side. I had to leverage some screenshots in Zoom so we can really see all the details as we go forward. I'm going to take a quick pause here, just allow anybody to unmute, throw me a couple questions. Is there anything more on the Zoom interface on the web that you have any questions on?
Adam, how do you make all students have a video? A lot of them are saying they don't have access to video, but if you want in your classroom all students to have video, what do we need to provide for them, or what do I need to do for them?
You know, that's a great question. I'll just tell you right now, there is a what I would say a webcam shortage. And when I say a shortage, you can get some webcams. You can get some decent ones that would somewhat work online for $50 or less. The problem is the ones that we really think of as good standards, have great mics and great things, are very difficult to get at the moment. I think what we could do is work on a case-by-case basis with students. We don't have a large ability to check them out because of the shortage. We had to outfit all our rooms and whatnot. Typically, we have them show up, but you would have to probably outline that in the syllabi. That's actually a great question. Is there a specific task or thing that you're hoping that they would do when you had video on?
Yeah, because I teach methods classes, so they would have to be able to show, demonstrate, do those kinds of things to other people in the Zoom meeting.
So right now we do have our tech drive-through, which allows students to check out Chromebooks and laptops that have integrated webcams. So if you have a student that's having an issue with having access, I would suggest having them go here. So I'm just gonna jump online for just a second here. Oops, I'm showing some of my slides. Let me minimize this guy. Oh, you know what? I can't because I have to stop sharing. Let me do this. I'm gonna just show you where tech drive-through is, and then that way you can kind of point your students towards this. This is a good question before we jump into it. I know I'm not sharing quite yet. Let me share again. Okay, so you should be seeing our homepage of the website. So one of the things is if the students, they could probably just even search it, but if they go to like about and information technology here, we will have our tech drive-through. That's right on that front page. And what tech drive-through allows them to do is set up appointment. And so they do have to schedule a time. So they have a half-an-hour window to come in. We did get a copious amount of computers. Now, going to the fall, we're going to see how much that stock gets depleted. But right now, we do even have Verizon hotspots available for students. So this is probably your best answer on short term of how they would be able to leverage video in the classroom. So I suggest that tech drive-through. Go ahead, Denise.
One quick point. We have a lot of Chromebooks available for students to check out, and those have webcams built in. The only caveat with the Chromebook is that their app right now for the Chromebook doesn't allow student annotation on the whiteboard in Zoom. But the way you can work around that is to use either Google Jamboard or a Google Slides, something like that. Students could still hear you speaking and be working collaboratively, writing or typing on their device. So if you're interested in learning more about how to make those connections work, just shoot me an email and I can go through that with you in a Zoom session.
Okay. Next question I have is, our office computers do not have a webcam at all. So if we're on campus and we're trying to do a Zoom lesson, that's going to create a difficult situation.
Yeah, and that is being addressed at this point. We do have a certain stock of webcams. The problem is when we get that stock in, so certain departments have already made asks. So I actually know that your department did make an ask already for a certain number. So that's likely being purchased at the moment.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. All right, so let's continue on with the session. We have about 20 or so more minutes to get through some of these pieces. So just to kind of bring you back, you're now sitting ready to launch your call. We launched the call and it's gonna open up. There's gonna be some additional settings. So you're gonna see some funny, goofy pictures of me kind of pointing out some of the different aspects of this, but we're gonna use these pictures as reference. So what you're seeing is me pointing at the very far left-hand side of your menu. So if you're in your Zoom call right now, it's a little difficult because I'm doing a share screen, but when you move your mouse, there's a bar that will show up at the very bottom of your windows. And what that bar shows you is all the different aspects of what you can click on throughout your Zoom call. So the very first one, far left, is your audio. We kind of use that at the beginning of the session to mute and unmute ourselves. You'll also know there's a little up arrow that's pointed there. Now that up arrow, when you click it, it's going to give you a whole slew of other selections. So sometimes you have two different microphones clicked into your computer, or you have a different speaker bar that's in there. it's always really good to just look in there. There's a little check box that's going to be next to the items that you're looking at. So from a troubleshooting perspective, I know I've done this before, is I click that mute button or something and I accidentally open that menu and click the wrong thing. And then I'm talking and no one can hear me or something's going wrong. What I always tend to do is say, click that little button and it's going to open up the menu. Make sure it's pointed at the devices that you're expecting it to be pointed at. We'll go into one of those menus in a second and show you some additional details. If you go just to the right of that, that's also your video on/off. So as you have a video in there, you can turn that on or off. In my particular instance, it just has one video camera. When you're in the classroom, there's actually going to be two. There's one for the dot cam, and then there's one for the webcam. So you're going to have to swap between the two. So if you're teaching in a classroom, this is going to be a little tiny arrow that you will be pressing if you use that dot cam. Now, one thing to note, it was a question asked earlier about virtual backgrounds. There is that button there that says virtual background, choose virtual background. Now, you can definitely take a look at that. There's a screen a little bit later on and we'll talk about video backgrounds. We just want to kind of run through this bottom menu first. The next step is one of the new features that's been outlined by Zoom, and that's the security button. So the security button is here to really identify specifics on what you're going to allow in these sessions. So you can lock the meeting down. So like you get to a certain point and there's nobody else that's going to be coming in, you lock it. It basically allows any other users that haven't made it, it's going to say the meeting's non-available. Allowing participants to share their screen. So you saw me share my screen, and then I'm giving you the ability to share your screen if I am able to click this on. So what's cool about that is you can kind of disable it, because this is what was happening with the Zoom bombing. The Zoom, people would just have share screen on, and then students would be sharing the screen, or somebody would jump in the call, share something pretty inappropriate, and then jump out of the call. So this is a security mechanism to really stop that from happening. And just being aware of where you can allow this, I see this being really helpful when you have student presentations. So you're going to do a round robin in a class, and maybe have a few students need to do some present outs. And you're going to tell them to share the screen. It's just at the bottom, click it there, and they're going to get a message that says they can't share the screen until you go to this button and click share screen. So keep in mind that that security is going to be there. Now, a lot of what you're seeing right now, I just want to preface this, is that you're seeing it from a licensed Zoom account. And because you're a participant in my meeting, you will not see some of the buttons that you're seeing on my screen. So keep in mind that this will change when you have host privileges. You are seeing it from a host perspective. And so it's probably great because you're seeing it from a student perspective, and you can understand how you might see it from a student perspective. The next step is looking at our participants. So participants window up here will open up. So I'm just turning on participants. There's only one in this particular screenshot, but everyone that's in the call are gonna start showing up in that right-hand menu. You're gonna notice that there's a little tiny icon of a microphone, and you also have one of a video camera. That's where you're gonna be able to tell if everyone is muted or not, or who has a video camera, who does not. That's a place you can manage from there. That's not just an icon, but you can click it and mute someone in that menu. I can't tell you how many times I've had to mute someone because in the middle of a call, there's some feedback, or they start talking to somebody else and forget that they muted their thing. So it's always good practice to know to get to this participants window, and you can click that in that bottom area. So going to the next one is also your chat screen. So you may want to see your chat. In my instance, I don't really do full screen Zooms a lot of the time. I like it to be full windowed, but I like to keep that chat screen and that participant screen in there. Now, in certain instances, it will just kind of jump up and hover on the board. There's some settings within your settings screen that I'll show you in a bit here that can allow you to dock it like that on that right-hand side. So this is a great instance of a setup because you can see who your participants are. You can see any chats that are popping in there as you go along. So just moving a little bit further to the right is our polling. So polling is a nice feature when you want to throw up a quick poll, be able to get some insights anonymously or by users in the setup. So let's just pretend I clicked on that poll button and I didn't have a poll pre-set up. I click on that blue add questions button, and it's going to open up a web browser, and it's going to take you into a browser where you're going to set up a name of the question if you're going to want it anonymous, and then a type of question that you're going to ask. So you go ahead and set up your question, and once you hit save, it's going to drop you back into the Zoom call, and you can start your polling. So you can see that same question that I just asked could be available from there. So what we can do is I could just do a quick poll, and we can start this exact kind of setup right now. So I'm going to throw a poll up. I would hit this add question. So right now I'm not sure you're not going to see what I'm going to do. So get ready to do your votes. Okay, so now I have the polling opened. Everyone should have a poll that pops up. I'll be able to collect those results.
And then one thing for your students, if they have a pop-up blocker on their browser, that will block the poll from coming up. So make sure at the beginning of the sessions you ask them to turn off their pop-up blockers.
All right, looks like everyone has got their poll, so I'll end the poll, and then we can share the results. So you can kind of see all the results of the poll. Most people are enjoying Zoom, so it's a good way to just do a quick check-in with anybody. You can definitely leverage that in different ways and add other poll questions and have those ready to go beforehand. So I'm going to go ahead and click off on that poll, and I'm going to jump back into sharing a screen. Now you're going to have to get used to like jumping.
I'm sorry, Adam. Can you tell us once more, how did you get started? Where do you go to start that?
Yeah, sure. So let me jump back into our session here. So you won't see it on your screen because you're not a host, but where it would be is at the very bottom. So if you can see on the screenshot, there is a, let's go over here, a little polls button. And it looks like a little bar graphs at the very, very bottom of the screen, and it'll say polls underneath it. It'll be to the right of the participants button.
Okay, okay.
The good way to think about Zoom is you're going to pretty much launch anything from that little bottom window. One of the things is it will auto hide, and there is a way to turn auto hide off if you keep losing that menu. Sometimes it feels like you're fighting with that menu because it keeps disappearing. Once you get a little bit more used to it, you like it to kind of auto hide, at least I do. But again, then once you click that, it goes to this little pop-up, and then it's going to allow you to add your questions, and then you can continue forward.
One other point on polls, you can set those up in your account before your class also. So you can write a lot of questions on it. So if you wanted to prep your class before the class meeting and then just open your poll, you have the option to open a pre-created poll.
Yep, and that's what we would suggest to do, is to probably have those all set up prior to that session. So the next one is you have your share screen. We talked about share screen a little bit. So we're clicking on that green button that would be in the middle of your screen at the bottom. So as you click on your share screen, it sometimes gets a little confusing because it's like, okay, share screen. Oh, what do you want to share? So you have a whole slew of options as to what you could share. So you could share your screen, you could share a whiteboard, you could share different versions of it if you're on a phone or whatnot. And then you can also share different apps that are opened on your computer. So it gets a little confusing. What I suggest you do is once you get into a Zoom call, just open up your own Zoom call on your own account when it's just you, and you could try sharing and going between and seeing how it's sharing different pieces of it. I typically do a screen. If you have two screens, it will say screen 1, screen 2. It will actually put a number on each of your screens if you have multiple screens, so you know which one you're about to share. I typically just always share that first screen, which is my entire window to you all. Once you click on that share, you get into a sharing session. So you would be seeing my entire desktop. One of the things that you're going to notice is up at the very top of my screen now, you'll see a picture of me. So it kind of puts your little video window at the top. And then at the very top, you're going to have this little drop down, and it's going to have all those options that used to be at the bottom of your screen now flip up to the top of the screen. This is the most disorienting part, or at least it could be disorienting, because I think you can pull this around and you can readjust it as you see fit. In my particular case, it was at the top of the screen, but you can just grab this like green thing where it says you're sharing the screen, and you can put that little window wherever you like. So in my case, it's at the top of the screen. So once you click on that, you're also going to notice that there's a new button called Annotate. So Annotate allows you to do some additional work on the screen where you can write on the screen. You can annotate if you had a slide deck up on there, you can write on it. You can allow others to write on that screen as well. So there's a lot of options as to how you leverage that. Okay, so let's just try a screen share. So I'm going to stop this for a second. Let me go over here. I think I'm going to have to do this. Share my screen. And we're going to do, I'm going to do a whiteboard actually. Okay, so everyone in the call should be able to go to a little panel that says Annotate. And should be able to start writing on this screen simultaneously with me. So there's that little area that popped up, that little window. So you're gonna have to find it maybe at the bottom of your screen, maybe at the top of your screen.
Should be at the top where it says View Options. Click that little drop down, and then the Annotate is there.
And then from that window, you can see there's little stampers. There's different tools that you can select to do. And you should see everyone around. So this is just on a whiteboard, but you can see if you were doing kind of a project of kind of working together that this might be that area that you could do that. Now, I have some options. I could clear just my drawings. I can clear all drawings. I can clear all the viewers' drawings. So for instance, I'm going to clear all my drawings. And so mine disappear, but anybody else's are still on the screen. There's also an option to save all those options as well. So it's just a nice tool to be able to leverage. Like I said, I opened the whiteboard, but that option is also available when you're sharing other things like just a screen or it's on your desktop or a PowerPoint if you're wanting to highlight different things. So I'm going to go ahead and stop the share now. So I'm going to stop that piece and I'm going to go back into our slide deck. So writing on the screen could be very helpful. It's a little difficult with a mouse, I'll tell you that much, because a mouse just doesn't feel quite right. There are other ways that you can have like little Wacom tablets and other ways if you're really gonna start leveraging the annotation. It also really works well on devices that have a touch screen. Denise did mention that the Chromebooks do not allow some of the annotation pieces, but there's some other computers that will allow those things as well. Okay, so next up is recording. So recording is the ability to take what you're doing, which I'm recording right now, for instance, and have a copy of it. There's a couple of reasons that you're going to want to think about recording. Right now, it's only allowing you to do local recording, which means that you would record to your local machine, to your computer that's in your office. What happens in a local record, though, is you have a file that you're going to have to do something with when it's done. You're going to have to upload it to YouTube. You're going to have to put it in a place that you could share it if you're intending to share it. We're currently working on a release where you're going to be able to record it. It would record it to the cloud, and then it would show up in your class without having to do anything. That is hopeful for fall. We're looking towards that as being a way to be able to do that. It looks like I did have a question that we can address in a little bit, how you can illustrate how PDFs can be revealed on the screen and how to move between the two. So you can illustrate just like jumping between it. So just wanted to talk about how you could do that when we were talking about screen share. Right now, I'm in a screen share. So let's say I needed to go to another document. What I would just have to do is either stop the screen share I'm in. So for instance, in this case, I would minimize my screen share and I could jump and I'm just showing whatever is on my document. I'm showing a presentation right now, but if I wanted to open anything up, I could do that easily. So for instance, here's just a picture that I have on my screen. I could show off. Essentially, a screen share is just sharing it with everyone. And it's showing whatever is on your screen at that moment is getting broadcast to anybody on that other end. So I'm hoping that answers the question that was just posed. So to get back into my screen share or my presentation, I just have to open up my presentation. In this particular case, I'm running it full screen, so that's how I get back into it. Okay, so We talked about recording a little bit. The last point on that is that should be more of an automated process as we go along. One thing to note though with recordings is it's likely only going to exist for 15 days. So you have a 15-day window to download your recording if it goes in the cloud, or for your students to watch it if you do a recording. Otherwise, that recording is going to disappear. Breakout rooms. This is the big one. This is one of the ones that's been asked about for quite a bit of time. You would use a breakout room to split up a group into different little sections. So you can have little group activities that happen in breakout rooms and then pull everyone back into those sessions. So breakout rooms are really handy. There's different ways you can create it automatically or manually, and you can create a variety of breakout rooms. So if you knew what your class section was, you can figure out automatically if you were going to pull groups together just randomly, you'd use the automatic. It's going to pull them into little groups based off of your settings. Or if you're going to do manual, you can build those groups. And you can build those groups ahead of time to kind of before you deploy that. Now, the options for these rooms, you can move all your participants to those rooms automatically. You can allow them to return to the main session at any time. So let's say you break everyone out and you say, okay, go figure out this problem, but return back here when you're ready. You can have it run in that kind of a session. I've seen it where you actually deselect that one and you break out the breakout rooms to close automatically after a certain duration. So let's say you have a 15-minute activity. What you do is you click the breakout rooms to close after 15 minutes. And what you do is you send everyone out, everyone automatically goes in their breakout rooms, everyone has their session, you work through things, and then everyone kind of gets collected back into the main event. Typically what you do when you work out in breakout sessions, this is just like a quick pedagogical tip, is if you're going to break them out into sessions, have each of those sessions have a person that's maybe a reporter, so to speak, and somebody to also kind of notate. What's going to happen is when you bring them back, you typically want to do some report outs, do a round robin to the groups, and discuss with the major group what you've learned out. So just make sure you're articulating that beforehand. You don't want to just throw everyone into groups and then have them islanded. But one thing that's cool about you as the host is you can kind of jump between breakout groups and peek in, help give some direction, and jump out. So you are kind of the nomad between the groups. You can only ever be in one session at one time. One last point though, is the chat is universal. So the chat doesn't go separate to each breakout room. So if you post in a question, for instance, all the breakout rooms gets to see that chat. So it's just a little nuance of the system. So it's nice to kind of articulate what you're expecting to happen when you get in the breakout rooms, send everyone to their breakout rooms, have the fun session, and then we can come back. I did not prepare breakout rooms, but we could.
I have one quick thing on breakout rooms. When you send your students off to work, they have, they can annotate on a whiteboard. Each breakout room has a whiteboard. They can work on the whiteboard, download and share it, download it, and then share it back out with the whole group as well. One way that I encourage even participation from everyone is I tell each person in the group to write with a different color on the whiteboard. And then that way I can visually immediately see that everyone has contributed to the creation of this share out.
Yeah, so breakout rooms are a huge component of doing kind of engaging work. Now, one of the questions we've been asked is, how do you do group work when you have half your participants online and half of them in a classroom, or if you have a mix of the two? So the best suggestion we can give in those scenarios is tell your in-classroom students to bring in laptops or devices and have them join the Zoom. So you're Zooming in the room that they are also attending. The trick of it is they got to mute their mic, or it's going to create this crazy feedback loop. But what it'll allow you to do is you could send people to breakout rooms, and you could potentially have a few people on site and remote. There may have to be some spreading out of that particular room to create that would stop some of the feedback you might get in a scenario like that. But that's just an example of an option, is that anybody can be in the chat at the same time, even if you're remote or not, asking questions as you go along. So kind of moving forward, as we start looking at the remainder of the items, if you're on the cameras right now, you should see a little reactions button at the very bottom of your toolbar. So you'll see right now a hand clapping and a thumbs up. What that allows you to do, if you click on one of those, you should see on your video, it will show the thumbs up or the clapping. So if you're liking something or you wanted to kind of applaud a particular person without using audio because you're locked out of it, that's what you can use with the reactions. It's a cool little tool.
I got one too. Once you get good with Zoom, you can go into your account settings and turn on non-verbal feedback. You have to watch the participant window to see that, but that gives the students the ability to raise their hand, to tell you to go forward, or to go faster or go slower. So you can get some little feedback cues from them without them having to interrupt the lecture. So that might be something you want to explore down the road.
Yeah, keep that in mind for sure. And in a basic session, there's a lot of little nuances we can take a peek at. And that one is definitely handy. I can tell you when you start getting into facilitating Zoom calls, it starts feeling a little weird at first when if you're not used to not getting that feedback, that nonverbal feedback from when you're standing in a classroom and students are having reactions and kind of to what you say, it's a little easier to understand. But then when you're in a video call and maybe somebody doesn't even have a video on, it's hard to really keep track. Am I going too fast? Did I ask that question right? So that is going to be a good barometer of what you might need to do as you move forward. Let's look at some of these final settings, and then we can kind of close up in regard to our call today. We're getting close to the end of this session. So you can get to the video settings menu or the audio settings menu or really any of these, the settings for Zoom while you're in a call by clicking that little up arrow. And you could do this all right now because you'd all have this exact same menu. This is not specific just to hosts, but you click that little up arrow and it's going to bring you to your video settings or your general settings or actually all the settings that you can do within the call. I'm not going to go through this list exhaustively. It's just a settings window. You can click through those items on the left. But I did want to point out just a few key items. So right now, when you click on video settings, you're going to see, okay, there's my camera. If you want the widescreen ratio, which I have a widescreen camera, I have that on. I enable HD. That will give you a little bit clearer picture from what you're seeing if you have the bandwidth and the ability for your computer to run it. There's also the ability to mirror your window. So if you're looking at yourself, it mirrors it like you're looking into a mirror. Sometimes it's disorienting if you're seeing yourself kind of in real time, it's not mirrored out. There's a few other options that you might want to look and click on to your preference as you look into there. So just kind of keep an eye on some of those. One of the other ones I'm going to skip to is your virtual background. That was one that was asked of before. So virtual backgrounds, that is also in your settings menu. What you can do is you can click, there's a little tiny plus sign and add different virtual backgrounds. Now, depending on your computer type, you may have some limitations as to what kind of virtual backgrounds you can pop in there. It really depends on your computer and its capabilities. So if you do not have a green screen, sometimes you may not be able to do a virtual background without a green screen. So if you wanted to go ahead and click in there, you just click on one of the different backgrounds and then you'll be able to change your background. So if you want to take a minute and give that a go, let's go ahead and give it a try. I'm going to stop share for just a second. So if you want to see if you can turn on a virtual background, you'll click that little up arrow in that window there. And then you'll have to click choose virtual background, and there may be a few in there. If you're not seeing any images in there, you may have to upload an image that's on your computer. In which you do that as a little plus sign to allow you to do that. I don't know if is anybody seeing that? Anybody have any questions on it? Oh, there's one. She's got it. Sweet.
Nice.
Nice.
And now, one of our faculty purchased a green screen on a frame for like $25 from Amazon. And he just sets it up behind him whenever he teaches his classes. So if your image isn't looking exactly right, that might be an option for you.
Yeah, so with yours, Chris, it may be that your computer needs a green screen. So what it's trying to do is it's identifying a color that's on the back of behind you, and it's trying to say, oh, this is the most of what it is. And so it's trying to emulate a green screen. I think your computer just may not have the one where it can just virtually fill in the whole thing. So in your instance, even if you had a different location, I don't know if you're on a laptop, but let's say you're in a room that had mostly a white background, you might have a little bit more success. Basically, the way the program works is it's trying to identify a similar color that's behind it and key it all out and then keep you in the shot. So it's real close on yours. You probably could get it to work if you just had a little bit more contrast between you and your background.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so we're nearing the end of the session. So that was one of the big pieces that I wanted to make sure that you understood. I'll share my last few slides and just go from there, and we can open up for some final questions as we go along. Last bit is how you get out of the call. So once you've set everything up, you're going to notice that in the lower left-hand side, there is this opportunity to end the meeting or leave the meeting. So there is a difference. So let's say you have some really great discussion going on. You're not going to another Zoom call, but you need to leave. You can leave all your participants in the meeting so that they're discussing and continuing that conversation when you you have to bail out. So that's a great way to do that. Now, let's say you needed to get your call set back up again in another 30 minutes. You can end that meeting, or you can even jump back in and just end the meeting. There's different ways that you can close that meeting out on the back end. But if you hit end meeting for all, the second you hit that, it cuts the video for everyone. And so you'll see that in a little bit, right, when we just close out our meeting today. If you've been recording locally, the first thing that happens right when you end the meeting, it's going to be like, whoa, hey, the meeting's done. We're going to just start processing your meeting, and it's going to start recording it or finalizing. And it can take up to 10 to 15 minutes to record that meeting to your computer. But as far as a Zoom overview is concerned, that is what we have today. So you can always reach out to myself. There's actually a whole slew of people that will get you to. Our IT help desk is typically the first person to contact when you want to start getting into Zoom. We will have additional sessions. We also have some great resources that will be available in the professional development Blackboard course and soon to be on our CTL website as well. But I wanted to open it up at this point. Any additional questions, any comments, any kind of things that you're thinking about. I also am going to throw in a link to just a review of this session for today. We really just want your feedback on how we're doing or any insights of how these sessions are going. Any questions? Denise, can you throw that link in there? I accidentally closed my other screen. I just didn't have it readily available.
Feedback form link?
Feedback form, please.
Yes,
thank you.
One moment.
Any other comments? I know that there was one that I believe was asked about kind of navigating between PDFs and PowerPoints, and it really just came down to when you share your screen, whatever is up, you go between the two. Yeah, Denise had just thrown that form in there. So if you can just take a few minutes to click on the link that's in your chat, that's going to help us kind of fix this session. Now, there's a lot of little things that I did not include in this session. And one good one that you can take a quick peek at is if you open your chat, you can type in some messages. If everyone wants to even just play with chat for a bit, the way that you open your chat is you have to highlight your mouse on your screen. There's a little chat window button that's at the very bottom in that nav bar that we were talking about. And it looks like a little bubble. You click that bubble, it'll either toggle it on or off, and you should see a chat. You can type into that chat. You also know there's a way that you can share files with that chat. So if there's a file you need to spit out to everyone in the class, you can do that there. You can private chat as well. So you have a quick message that you want to send to somebody, you can do that. At the end of your session, you can download the chat. You can save all those chat interactions and make sure you do it. One thing to be careful of is if you download a transcript of the chat, any private messages that you were involved in will be in that chat that you downloaded. So just make sure that you don't post that chat out to anybody else. And if you're not having any private messages with anybody, it won't be downloaded. And so one of the questions is, how do you get a Zoom account? How do you get one set up as a faculty member? How many of you have Zoom accounts that you can start Zooms with? Let's go ahead and use reactions. Give me a thumbs up if you have a Zoom account. Anybody?
Not with school.
Okay, if it's not with school, school does have an enterprise version. So you're going to want to get on that so you're not paying for the licensed account. We are using the CSU-Pueblo EDU account, so it does have to be set up through your university email account. But the typical procedure is you give the help desk a call, or you can also just visit the help desk online. We have a way you can submit a ticket and just say, please provision a licensed Zoom account, and we'll get those to you as soon as we can. What's going to have to happen, though, is we're going to send you an invite for the CSU-Pueblo Zoom account to your university email, and then you just accept it, and then you'll have access to the full version of Zoom. What that does is it associates you with our instance, our recording, all the different pieces of it. You'll notice that your URLs, once you have a fully licensed Zoom account, will actually say csupueblo.zoom.us in the URLs you're sending out to students or participants. That really brands it well so that they know that, hey, this is a CSU-Pueblo kind of sanctioned piece. Now, just because it's CSU-Pueblo doesn't mean that anybody can join. Anybody can join outside of the organization that you send that link to. It's very flexible.
Adam?
Jonathan.
Yeah. Difference between the personal meeting room and setting up a meeting. If used to the way my Zoom account is structured now, everything sort of defaults to my personal meeting room. I mean, is that a good way to go through life?
I would say,
should you start classes with separate meetings? I mean, I think there's something to be said for having the same link to not having to send the same link every time. But if you did that with a class, would the class for the whole semester be that same link for them?
Yeah, so that's that's a great question. And what I can do is let me do this, because it's such a good question that I think I should just share my screen one more time just to kind of walk through it. So I am in my Zoom account right now. And so if I go to my meetings over here, let's say you can, first of all, this is nice to see. So this meeting that I set up for us today is going to be consistent for every one of my sessions, regardless the time. Now, also notice that off to the left-hand side, there's a green little dot. That's telling me that my meeting's in session. And then off to the right, I can end the session or I can join it. I'm already in it, though, so I don't need to do that. But let's say I wanted to schedule a new session. When I hit schedule new meeting, everyone's seeing this, right? I'm not just talking to, okay, good. So I would say, let's just say that there's a class. The reason you'd want to kind of create separate links for each of your classes is that if you start having a class, let's say you had 2 classes and you're really wanting to have, think of that privacy, or just having one class come in versus another class, you want to kind of separate each class, say, this is the link for whatever class, and this link is for my other class. So there's 2 separate ones. So let's just say it's Zoom 101. We're going to teach Zoom 101. When you come down to here, if you want a reoccurring meeting, there's kind of 2 ways that you can do it. Let's say it's at a consistent time. Let's say it's at 12 p.m. every single day of the week, or every single Wednesday. So you can come over here, you can set your reoccurrence to weekly, and you set what day it is. So there it is, every day. And then you can stop it after a number of occurrences. Maybe it's 15 occurrences that you're going to do it. So every week, I have to actually type in 15. You type in the number, or maybe I have to click it. There we go. And now you would set up 15 different occurrences. As you start going down, you may turn on your waiting room. You can set up a few different parameters as you go along, but you would have one URL for all 15 of those occurrences. Now, here's the thing that I tend to like. I hate the time-based thing. I don't know why I'm opposed to it as much, because it just feels really limiting. So under this reoccurrence, they hide it. I click it and I hit no fixed time. And what it does is it gives you a link. It just stands in there as long as I want. So if I go down here and hit save, I'm going to go back to my meetings. Here is my reoccurring meeting for Zoom 101 that has no parameters towards when it's going to happen. It's just exists. Until I delete this meeting out of my meetings, I will have it perpetually under this number, and I can just schedule with whatever my calendaring app is that I choose, and just make sure that all that class has it. So what I would do is I would take this meeting ID for this particular meeting, and I would put it in all of my classes. And actually, I wouldn't even give them the ID. I would go over to this, click on my Zoom, click on my invitation, and I would copy this whole invite, put that into one of my courses. I'd go build my next course up with its own URL, and then you have distinct URLs for each of those instances. I hope that answers the question.
It does. Thank you.
Yep.
Where was the invitation? Sorry.
Yeah, it's no problem. So once you back into here, so I'm in my meeting when I'm scheduling those meetings. So if you were to schedule a meeting, there's no, you have to do that first. So now that this meeting exists, you just click on the topic title. So if this Zoom 101 is the one you want to share, you click it, and then it shows all the details of it. So you can just come right here and copy and paste. That's actually, this is the most important one, I'd say. This is the link if you just want to send them a link. But if you want to send them all the phone numbers, all the description, all the other details, you click on copy invitation, and it's going to show you all of those other details that you might have. There's actually even more than you would need in here, but this is just the big enchilada, so to speak. You can take it all, copy it, and then you send that out. And that's going to get pretty much anybody on any endpoint. They can join from a phone. They can join from a smartphone virtually with their camera. They can do it from a computer, from a MacBook, from pretty much any device, Google Chromebook that they have that can do some sort of audio and internet connected device. Well, that's going to wrap today's session. We will have another session coming tomorrow where I'm standing in a classroom to go through some of the tools a little bit more in depth like this. Unless there's any last minute questions, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. You have a great one.
Thanks.